Welcome back again. Merry Christmas. I trust that you are all doing great and well. And the God of Christmas is doing you well. Okay, let's get back to the story of Christmas. Let's look at Christmas from the beginning. Each time it's Christmas, or we are talking about Christmas, in most of our congregations, in most of our denominations, you notice that the text of the Bible, it's always in the book of Matthew, and some other time or some few times they will quote Isaiah, where the prophecy was given, and then move on to Matthew. But Christmas is actually from Genesis. Genesis is the beginning. You might be wondering, and that is why you and I are going to see it. The plan of God is from the beginning, and it's all the way down to the book of Genesis. So in case you have not noticed or you don't know, Christmas is from Genesis. So the text is already here, and I'm not going to read it here because it is a very lengthy text, and of course it's also a very common story that almost every Christian know or should know or must have known. So you and I know the story, but in case you don't know the story, that's why the text is over here, so that you go through it. Genesis chapter 3 from verse 1 to 24. And to enable us understand this Christmas from the beginning, I'm going to be discussing it under three main headings. Number one is going to be the provision from God, then the problem of man, and lastly, the promise of God. I take it again: the provision from God, the problem of man, and the promise of God. Just like I've done in other subsequent episodes, I always like to give it three headings at most so that we drive the point home. So let's start from the provision from God. Right from the beginning, God, after creating every other thing or making every other thing by the spoken word, let there be this, let there be that, and at the end of the day, he made man, Adam. And he also observed that Adam was alone. Remember that God, making Adam, he said he wants to make him in his own image, that is, in the image of God. And you know the story as it goes, and God made a helpmeet for him, giving us the impression of God concerning family, concerning marriage. Because first and foremost, relationship started with God. It is between God and man, then man to man. And of course, relationships varies. Relationship is not always about marriage. God was primarily interested in that family, and that is the reason he brought the woman to the man. And the provision of God, he had already made everything beautiful. He had prepared everything. There is nothing that man will be looking for that is not available before he brought in the woman. That was the provision of God before now. And what was the problem of man? The serpent. The problem of man wasn't the serpent, I beg your pardon. The problem of man was disobedience, rejecting the provision he has made from the beginning. I'm going to tell you about that provision when I'm talking about the promise of God. The serpent came to Eve, just like most times you get to hear a lot of interpretations, ministrations, or talks from your within, and you tend to listen to them. That was what happened when serpent came to Eve, and he began to ask, did God actually said you should not eat from this? Can you imagine that? And Eve went ahead to say, he did not just say we should not eat it too. He said we should not even touch it. And the story continued. And Eve listened to the serpent as against the instruction that God had put down. And that was the problem of man, disobeying. God has set life and death. That tree of life is not tree as per physical tree, just the way we were told in the days of our Bible story. back in this Sunday school. It represents the provision that God had made. Jesus Christ. God has said, this is life and this is death. I wish you would choose life that you might live. But rather than choosing life, the problem that man created for himself was to go to choose death. And that was the reason Eve ate that apple and gave to Adam, her husband, and Adam concurred. And that was where the beginning of the problem of man started. That was where the whole problem started. And because God have created man as a moral agent, you have your willpower. God never imposes it on anybody at all. And that was the reason Eve and Adam made that choice. And God was quiet. But the beautiful thing is that there was a promise. After the fall, after the disobedience, when they have refused to choose life, God is proactive. God is not like man. God foresees. He had already made the provision before now. The provision, he placed them in that garden. That garden is Jesus. Then he re-emphasizes the promise, making it clear. He told the serpent, the child, the fruit of the woman will do what? Bruise your head. All of those things are figurative, but it was actually pointing to Christ. The major reason why we celebrate Christmas. So Christmas, you cannot talk about the story of Christmas without going back to Genesis, where it all began. The Bible says, in the beginning was the Word. W-O-R-D. That is Jesus. God is interested in you. So, what is that choice you have made? Is it for or against? And so if it is against, this Christmas season, go back to the promise of God and the provision. Remember, the center of it all started with a family, Adam and Eve. And so God is interested in the littlest decisions you make in your family. If you do not have Christ, then your Christmas is not complete. And I do hope that this Christmas will be beautiful for you as you choose the provision and the promise of God. God bless you.